Thank you. Thank you all. Power to the people. Power to the people. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here, for joining us here at this UNAC conference, Decolonization and the Fight Against Imperialism. This is my 5th UNAC conference. The first was in 2012, I think it was, in Connecticut. And it was, excuse me, shortly afterward, I joined the administrative committee of UNAC. And I've had the honor of working with comrades in this organization and with people like yourselves. What do we say at UNAC? We say, stop the wars at home and abroad. We've spent this weekend talking about that war, a war waged by capitalists, racists, imperialists, usually all the same, against humanity. These people are the modern-day descendants from those who did the very same thing in centuries past. Here in Minnesota, in Mankato, Minnesota, the largest public execution in U.S. history took place when 38 Lakota men were hanged on December 26, 1862. They were killed for resisting the genocide against their people in the so-called Lakota War. We can also look outside the window here and see the Mississippi River, which begins here and flows down to the Gulf of Mexico. The Mississippi River was one of the largest means of transit in the domestic internal slave trade, as human beings were sold along this route in Missouri and Kentucky and Tennessee and Arkansas and Mississippi and Louisiana, and sold into enslavement, into slave markets along that route. Everything we've talked about this weekend have their beginnings in these stories. Stolen land, stolen human beings, wars against humanity. More recently, it was here in Minnesota in 2020 that a man named George Floyd was murdered by police. His killing set off mobilizations across the country, around the world, actually. But of course, we all remember what we were taught in science class. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And lo and behold, suddenly there were what are euphemistically called public safety centers and police training centers began to pop up all over the country. But the right term is cop cities. And yes, the word is plural. And there was a great workshop here on this topic yesterday. It's kind of hard. I don't want to preach to the choir, but there are just some things I want to remind you of. In looking at the program and talking with you all, it's clear that we know we're in a battle for survival. That's not hyperbole. It's not possible. Unfortunately, there's so many, that's the downside of a conference. It's like, I want to go to this, I want to go to that. No, that conflicts with my workshop. But anyway, so I missed today's panel on climate change, climate justice, and war. This is a topic that doesn't get enough attention. The people I spoke of, the capitalists, the imperialists, the racists, are in the process of killing all life on the planet. With our money, you know all the fossil fuel companies are subsidized, you know that, right? A few days ago, I saw this headline: Greenland's great glaciers are melting 100 times faster than estimated. Every month in the past year has been the warmest month since records were kept. March 2024 was the hottest March in history. February 2024 was the hottest February in history, and so on. And of course, a country with 800 military bases around the world plays a role. How much fossil fuel is needed to fly jets and operate ships and so on, and run military bases? So we talked about that issue here at this conference. Of course, we talked about Palestine, and we have to, we must. We say we live in the belly of the beast, and we see it in Gaza. The president, who we are told is defending democracy, went to Israel and gave a blank check to kill thousands of people. And he has the support of Congress, by the way. Now, I deliberately omit the name of the Israeli prime minister because we cannot personalize this war. That's what they're trying to do, trying to get out of it. That's what Biden and leaders in Congress and their friends in corporate media are doing, trying to distract us by pointing fingers at a person, at one individual, and making him the villain when the U.S. is a villain as well, and will send weapons to Israel regardless of who sits in that office. And let's be clear, ethnic cleansing is the right term. That is the goal. And that's one of the things I appreciate about being here at a UNAC gathering, because people know that and will say that. The deaths of these at least 35,000 people, they're not collateral damage. Their deaths are the very goal of the project. And the crocodile tears shed are just that, because Israel will still get weapons, even after the deaths of the staff of the World Central Kitchen, an establishment NGO that worked closely with the Israeli government. The deaths of those people created a political crisis. But it was resistance, Palestinian resistance, which brought their deaths to public attention. To their great credit, Palestinians show us the dead. None of this, that might be disturbing, we won't show you that picture. No, you might want to close your eyes. Nope. They did what they usually did and showed the world these victims and accelerated the political crisis necessary to end these war crimes. UNAC understands the importance of bringing us all together from all over this country and the world. We have, as Jose just pointed out, two, not one, but two ambassadors this weekend from Nicaragua and the Western Sahara. This state and its allies and corporate media hide the rest of the world from us. UNAC does the opposite and brings the information we need to see that the same people who fight against the sovereignty of African nations and who want to destroy the Nicaraguan revolution are the same people who build cop cities. The same people who speak of mistaken, quote unquote, mistaken killings committed by the IDF sound just like the people who dismiss the more than 1,000 police killings that take place in this country and call those mistakes. Yes, it's a number that people don't hear very often. I'll say it again, an average of 3 people every day killed by police in the US. But I want to say, trying to bring this all together about us here, I hope you all know that you're a revolutionary. You, yes, you. You know, that word used to scare me. The first time someone told me I was a revolutionary, I was like, no, I'm not, you know. I'm not that important. I don't know how to do that. So it was, I felt it was a word I could not live up to. And I thought, I don't know, I had to do something very grand to, you know, call myself a revolutionary, but that's not true. Sharing these issues, working on these issues, these are revolutionary acts. We, by taking part in UNAC member organizations, we know who our enemies are. We know that they are enemies, that we have enemies. And we know that wishful thinking, reformism, is a road to failure. And that's one of the important facts of a gathering like this. It gives us renewed focus and concentrates our efforts. Let me remind you all how change takes place. We know that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice only if we bend it. How have changes come about? Positive change happens when people like us mobilize and create political crises. That's what revolutionaries always do, and that's what we know at UNAC. I also want to point out something that isn't talked about, I don't think, enough. We also have to struggle with each other. That's all to the good. It's not something to be afraid of or nervous about. We can't move forward unless we learn how to engage in principled struggle with our comrades. If you're not struggling with someone, you're not doing enough work. And I also want to point out, just by being here, I think it's important to acknowledge what we're doing for ourselves and for one another when we come together like this. The capitalists want, the ruling class, they want us to be atomized, to be separate, to feel separated from each other. We're always told nobody wants to listen to us, nobody believes what we believe, no one agrees to us, agrees with us. And sometimes we have, in attempting to engage with people, even people we care about, it can be difficult. People who are in denial or are susceptible to propaganda. And that can be very frustrating, but the worst thing we can do is to believe that we are alone when we're not. There are thousands of people, millions, who don't want their public resources used for war, who know that their needs aren't being met precisely because the war makers and the fossil fuel producers get their money. One of the workshops I'm sorry to have missed was bringing anti-imperialist issues into community, workplace, school, and union organizing. Good people on that workshop. And I think it's important to say, because we should not think that we always have some heavy lift in talking to people. People know they're struggling to live. And that's why we see these funny news, ironic, not hilarious funny, news stories about how well the economy's doing. And then they say, we don't know why people don't like Biden, because they're doing so well. The economy's doing so well. But people know they're not living well. They know they're struggling. And the worst thing we can do is think that we're special people. We're unique in some sort of a unique bubble. And there are plenty of people who do get what we've been talking about, and others who are desperate to hear from us. And that's why they marginalize and censor us. The ruling class knows. You wouldn't bother censoring someone, would you, if you thought, nobody wants to listen to them? No, it's just the opposite. They know that people do want to hear what we say. And lastly, I don't think this is something that's going to apply to anybody here, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. One of the things that confuses people most in this country is that it portrays itself as a democracy. Of course, it's laughable, but that imperative is so strong because it is what people want to believe about themselves and the system they live in. That's why they use the word so much. They know it's appeal. It's a very powerful appeal. So we get to vote after this, they go in a smoke-filled room and choose candidates, but that's nothing but an oligarchy. But, this quadrennial political extravaganza, otherwise known as a presidential election year, can confuse a lot of people. I'm sure it's nobody here. I'm sure no one here in October is going to say, I really do need to vote for him because the other guy is so much more evil. So don't let that be you. Don't let that be anyone you call a friend. And I think, and I'm just going to close by saying this, I think in the end we're talking, I don't want to mess up the quote from Che about revolutionaries loving people, and that's an act of love, changing the world. But it really is. And, sometimes when you love people, you don't always get along in a particular moment and circumstance, but we have love for the world. We would not do what we do if we didn't care about people, if we didn't care about our own communities, about this country, about people all over the world. So I will close by saying power to the people and make love, not war. Thank you so much.